Some people beat up this helpless woman badly. But she didn't know that her husband was the most dangerous shooter in the world. This time there was a big target on her list, and she had been hiding in an empty warehouse for many days. Her eyes stayed on the window all day and night, watching her target's house. Day turned to night and night turned to morning, but her patience never broke. When 5 days passed with no sign of the target, she had to leave her hiding place. She went to the market to buy food. After buying what she needed, she called her secret boss and gave him a full report on the situation. On the phone, a rough voice ordered her to finish the job, take her payment and leave. The killer also promised calmly that the mission would end soon. Before going back to the warehouse, she sat outside the target's house for a while, carefully watching the daily habits of the guards, the security, and the people going in and out. Once she understood the pattern, she went back to her hidden spot. She put her sniper rifle together again, took her position and waited with her finger on the trigger. It was already late at night. She brushed her teeth and lay down to rest, but she didn't fall into deep sleep. She had set an alarm every 10 minutes. Each time it rang she would wake up, check the target's house through her binoculars and lie back down. In the middle of the night she heard noises. Through the lens she saw that the target had finally come home, and this time not alone. A dancer had come along too. Without wasting a second, the killer locked her aim on the target. The target had no idea that death was waiting just a few steps away. Music started playing in the room, and the dancer began performing in front of the target. The moment the target sat down on the sofa, the killer got ready to fire. She held her breath and pulled the trigger. But in that split second, the dancer suddenly moved in front of the target. The bullet passed straight through the dancer's chest and hit the target as well. The killer didn't fire again, but by then the loud shot had already alerted the guards. They rushed to shut the thick curtains and lock the doors. The mission had failed. But like a true professional, the killer didn't panic. She packed up her rifle, wiped away every fingerprint and trace of evidence, and disappeared from the warehouse like a shadow before the police could arrive. After the shooting, she got on an electric scooter and rode away. She dropped pieces of her bag along the road to confuse anyone following her. Once she crossed the edge of the city, she left the scooter safely by the roadside and continued on foot. Erasing her identity didn't stop there. As she walked, she dipped her helmet into a river and quickly slipped into the restroom of a grocery store. She trimmed her beard, changed her look and put on new clothes. Before leaving, she wiped down the entire bathroom so that no fingerprint or trace of her DNA remained. After that, she booked a taxi and headed straight for the international airport. Just before reaching the entrance, she dropped her most trusted weapon into an empty trash bin and joined the long line at the ticket counter. While waiting in line, her heart suddenly raced. She noticed a police dog staring straight at her. For a moment, fear washed over the killer's face. Worried she'd be caught, she hurried back to the restroom and cleaned herself thoroughly to remove any trace of gunpowder smell. On her way back, she used a fake passport and visa to pass through immigration. She was about to board her flight when her phone screen lit up. It was her secret boss calling. The moment she answered, a wave of anger came through the line. "You've ruined everything. What have you done?" the boss shouted furiously. Without offering any explanation, the killer calmly hung up the phone, broke it into pieces and walked onto the plane. But the trouble wasn't over yet. As soon as she boarded the flight, she noticed a strange and suspicious man who kept watching her closely. The killer's instincts immediately kicked in. The moment the plane landed, she canceled her next connecting flight and booked a new one under a fake name. But during check-in, she spotted the same strange man still waiting in the airport lounge. The warning bells were ringing loud. She decided to delay the rest of her journey until the next day and checked into an anonymous hotel in the city. As soon as she entered the room, she set a hidden trap on the doors and windows to avoid any surprises. Holding a sharp knife, she sat awake the entire night without blinking. Her plan was simple: anyone who came through that door would meet death instantly. But the night stayed quiet. No one came. The next morning, without wasting a moment, she rushed to the airport, boarded her flight, and safely returned home to the Dominican Republic. The moment she reached her house, her legs went weak with fear. Near the gate, she spotted footprints from a stranger's shoes and a cigarette butt lying on the ground. Her trained mind understood instantly something was very wrong. She loaded her gun without hesitation and stepped inside. What she saw made her heart sink. Fresh bloodstains were scattered across the floor. Shaking, she dialed her girlfriend's number. But when a stranger answered instead, she ran to the hospital as fast as she could. In the ICU, her girlfriend lay in a coma, drifting in and out of consciousness, while her brother sat quietly beside the bed. Through tears, her brother told her the truth, and it shattered the ground beneath her feet. He explained that a ruthless man and woman had broken into the house by force. Their real target wasn't the girlfriend, it was the killer herself. When they couldn't find her, they turned on her girlfriend instead. The girl fought hard to protect herself, but the attacker beat her badly. Half conscious, she managed to escape and saw the two attackers speed away in a taxi with a green roof. Seeing the person she loved in such a state, the killer's eyes filled with tears. He stayed by her side the whole night in that cold hospital room, holding her hand. Late that night, when she finally woke up, she told him a terrifying story through her tears. "They tortured me," she said. "They tortured me just to make me reveal where you were hiding. I bore all the pain, but I never gave you up." Hearing about her selfless love, something dark awoke inside the killer. He made up his mind, whoever had done this would not survive. That same night he went home and pulled out a heavy box of weapons. He was no longer in the mood to spare anyone. The next day he took his car and drove through the city streets. He had only one lead to find the attackers, the green roof taxi. He searched every corner of the city, every intersection, every lane, but found nothing. So he changed his approach. In the middle of the night, he broke into the taxi company's head office. He confronted the manager and held him at gunpoint. Then he hacked into the office computer system and dug through the entire travel record from that night, searching for the name and number of the driver who had carried the two attackers away from his house. The moment the driver's details appeared on the screen, he printed the file and vanished into the night. The next morning he sat outside the taxi stand like a hunter waiting for his prey. As soon as the driver arrived for his shift, the killer pretended to be an ordinary passenger and quietly slipped into the back seat of the taxi. The driver had no idea that he hadn't picked up an ordinary passenger, he had picked up the very man he'd helped attack. The car moved through the city streets while the killer sat quietly in the back seat, waiting for the right moment. Partway through the ride, when the driver turned around to ask something, his throat went dry with fear. A cold gun was pointed straight at him from behind. Thinking it was a simple robbery, the driver quickly pulled out his wallet and handed it over. But the killer didn't want money, he wanted the address of his enemies. He pressed the gun against the driver's head and demanded loudly, "That night, where did you take the two passengers you picked up from my house?" Staring death in the face, the driver's mind raced, and he began telling the truth in a panic. "Sir, I picked them up from a private airport and dropped them at your house. I waited outside for them. When they came back, they were both bleeding, the man's leg especially was badly hurt. I figured they were important people who needed rides to and from the airport, so I didn't ask questions. I just drove them back to the same private airport and got paid. I swear I have nothing to do with any of this. Please don't kill me." With this, the killer now had a clear trail to follow. He calmly ordered the driver to steer the car toward an empty, out-of-the-way place. The driver began begging, "Sir, I'll do whatever you say. I told you the truth. Just let me go." But a professional killer never leaves a witness behind. Before the driver understood what was happening, the killer silenced him for good. Once that was done, the killer changed his identity again. With a new fake passport and ticket, he boarded a flight to New Orleans. His goal was clear: track down the two people who had killed the woman he loved. As soon as he landed, he rented a van to avoid being traced and drove to his secret storage unit. There he gathered a few chosen weapons, a silencer and a new ID card. After swapping the van's number plate, he headed straight to a commercial cleaning company and signed himself up as a cleaning worker. With his cleaning equipment in hand, he made his way to the very building that housed his own agency, his secret boss's headquarters. The cleaner's uniform made it easy to blend in, but he soon realized the building's tight security meant he needed a digital access pass to get inside. Sensing things could go wrong quickly, he waited patiently for the right opening. Soon he spotted a delivery van unloading heavy goods into the building. His sharp mind spotted an opportunity. He grabbed a large trash container and casually walked in through the door behind the delivery. Once inside, he pretended to mop the floor for a while. As soon as the delivery worker stepped away, he pulled out the weapon hidden beneath his uniform. He walked straight to his boss's office. The moment he opened the door, he saw his boss sitting with his secretary. Without hesitation, he drew his gun and forced the secretary to tie her own boss to his chair. "Give me the names and addresses of the two people who attacked my house," he demanded. Staring death in the eyes, the boss tried to keep his composure. "I swear I had nothing to do with this," he said. "That client, the one whose target you left unfinished in Paris, has lost his mind with anger over the botched job. He's the one who sent those two attackers. They came to kill you, but since you weren't home, they grabbed your girlfriend instead." The boss then warned him sharply, "You're insane for coming back here. Change your identity quietly and disappear somewhere in the world for a few years, where that client will never find you. Otherwise we'll all end up dead." But the killer, consumed by thoughts of revenge, ignored every warning. His eyes landed on a heavy nail gun nearby. He picked it up, aimed it at the boss's expensive laptop and fired several nails into the screen, shattering it. With his eyes he made the threat clear: "Talk now or the next nails go through your chest." Still, the boss was too proud to back down. He brushed off the threat and snapped back, "I've told you everything I know. Now get out of here quietly or things won't end well for you." Hearing this, the killer's anger exploded. Without a second's hesitation, he pulled the trigger of the nail gun and fired straight into the boss's chest. The boss cried out in pain. The killer pulled out his phone, looked the boss in the eyes and said, "Tell me the names of the two attackers or I won't call an ambulance. You'll die here in agony." But it was already too late, the wounds were too severe, and within seconds the boss died without revealing the secret. Frustrated that his only lead was gone, the killer turned his attention to the secretary, thinking she too needed to be silenced as a witness. But the woman was sharp. She saw the intent to kill in his eyes and quickly offered him a startling deal. Trembling, she said, "I know you won't let me live. But I have one request: make my death look like an accident, and leave my body somewhere my family can find it easily. That way my children will receive the life insurance money. In exchange, I'll give you the real names and addresses of the two killers." Moved by her final wish for her children's future, the killer agreed to the deal. He untied her ropes and let her go for the moment. He then wrapped the boss's body in a plastic bag, placed it inside the same trash container, cleaned every bloodstain from the office, and set off toward the secretary's house. Along the way, facing death so closely, the woman's courage finally broke. She began begging through tears, "I'll do whatever you ask. Please just don't kill me." But the killer didn't look satisfied. As soon as they reached the garage of his house, the woman began screaming with all her strength, hoping a neighbor might hear her. But the area was empty and quiet, no one was around to hear her cries. The killer grabbed her suddenly, opened the garage door and pulled the car inside. Facing death so closely, the woman finally revealed the names of both attackers. At the same time, she pulled out a hidden postcard from her drawer. On it was written the address of the real mastermind, the client who had ordered the entire deadly plot. With this final clue in hand, the killer kept his side of the deal. Without causing her pain, he quickly ended her life and placed her body at the bottom of the stairs, making it look like a simple accident at home, so the police wouldn't suspect foul play, and her children could still receive the insurance money. After leaving the secretary's house, the killer went straight to his secret storage unit. To erase every trace of evidence, he burned his former boss's body there. The next morning he went to a quiet, empty bridge and let the ashes scatter into the wind so nothing could ever be found. That night he thoroughly cleaned the rental van inside and out, replaced the fake number plate, and returned it to the rental company the next day. With every loose end tied up, his next destination was Florida, where the two people who had hurt his girlfriend were hiding. Once he arrived, he made his plan. He decided to deal with the man first, then the woman. Following the address on the postcard, he began tracking down the male attacker. Outside the house, he noticed a group of people spending time with a dog. As he watched them closely, one man caught his attention. He was walking with a slight limp. It was the same leg injury the taxi driver had mentioned. He had found his target. All day he watched the house closely, like a hawk circling its prey. In the evening he saw the group head to a nearby casino. The killer followed quietly, staying close and keeping watch even inside the casino. Around midnight, the limping man finally returned home alone. The countdown to revenge had begun. As the killer crept toward the house, the guard dog spotted him and began barking loudly. Quickly, he tossed a piece of drugged meat toward the dog. Within moments, it fell asleep and the path was clear. As soon as he stepped inside, the limping man suddenly attacked him from the dark. It turned out he was a trained fighter too, and he had already suspected that the man he'd wronged in Paris would eventually come looking for revenge. A brutal fight broke out between the two, full of punches, kicks, and anything they could grab. The room was quickly wrecked in the struggle. Just as the killer began overpowering him and grabbing his throat, the limping man managed to pull out a gun. To stay alive, the killer quickly slipped into a nearby bedroom and locked the door behind him. To provoke his enemy, he shouted through the door in a rough voice, "John, I know your real name. If you've got the courage, come in and finish this, or try to erase the evidence against you." John had already seen the killer's face, which meant he couldn't risk letting him live. Furious, he moved toward the door, but the killer, hidden inside the room, fired through the window instead. The bullets tore through the wooden door and struck John directly in the chest. The noise startled the dog awake and it rushed inside to protect its owner. The killer quickly locked it away. To destroy all remaining evidence and any trace of John's existence, he threw a burning petrol bomb into the house. Within moments, the entire building was engulfed in flames, and with one final explosion, John's story came to an end. Now it was time for the second person involved in the attack, Teresa. The killer changed his identity once more and boarded the next flight to New York. As soon as he arrived, he rented a car and drove straight to the upscale neighborhood where Teresa lived. Patient as ever, he watched and waited the entire day for the right moment. As night fell, he saw Teresa leave her home, dressed elegantly, heading to an expensive restaurant with a wealthy man by her side. The killer followed closely, staying just out of sight. Once the man left her alone, the killer walked into the restaurant and sat down directly across from her at her table. The moment Teresa looked into his cold eyes, she understood death itself was sitting across from her. But instead of panicking, she calmly signaled the waiter, ordered an expensive drink and swirled the glass slowly, her voice cool and steady. "So, you got rid of our boss?" Teresa asked. The killer said nothing, he simply gave a quiet nod. Teresa took a sip of her drink and said, "Look, I never had anything personal against you or that girl. We were just doing a job for the client's money. Honestly, I was against hurting her. My part was only supposed to end things quickly, without pain. But when you didn't come home, my partner John lost control and took his anger out on your girlfriend." Her smooth words didn't move the killer at all. He rested his hand near his pocket and said in a voice as cold as ice, "Nice story. But I'm still not letting you walk out of here alive." Realizing there was no point causing a scene, Teresa calmly stood up and walked out of the restaurant with him, heading toward a quiet, dark park where this final chapter of the plot would be settled. As they made their way down the steps into the park, Teresa suddenly stumbled and fell. Playing the victim, she reached out for his hand, asking for help. But the killer wasn't fooled so easily. He caught the deception in her eyes, and spotted a hidden knife tucked close to her chest. Had he reached out to help her, that blade would have gone straight into his throat instead. He acted first and the second attacker fell. With both hunters dealt with, the killer boarded a flight to Chicago. Now his target was the true mastermind, the client who had ordered the entire plot from the very beginning. Once in Chicago, after digging into the client's background, he realized this man was different from the rest. He was a wealthy billionaire, protected by security so tight it seemed nearly impossible to get past. Rather than rushing in, the killer stayed patient. He staked out the man's luxurious penthouse and studied his every move. One morning, as the billionaire drove out of his private garage, the killer slipped in like an ordinary passerby. But he quickly hit a wall. The main door was secured with an advanced digital lock. Without wasting time, he photographed the lock and began researching how to bypass it using contacts on the dark web. To crack the high-level security, he ordered a special device that could clone key cards. While waiting for it to arrive, he quietly transferred all his own savings and assets into a hidden account under a fake name, making sure no trace of himself would remain once this mission was over. He also picked up a few unregistered guns from a black market dealer nearby. Once the cloning device arrived, he set his plan into motion. He booked a session at a VIP gym located on the same floor as the client's penthouse. There he cleverly swiped a cleaner's access badge and used it with his device to create a duplicate key card. That evening, using the fake card, he slipped past security and made his way straight into the billionaire's bedroom. Gun in hand, he suddenly appeared before the startled man. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" the billionaire shouted in panic. Believing the man was only pretending not to recognize him, the killer pulled out the secret postcard from his pocket and held it up. The client's own face was printed on it. The moment he saw it, the client's face went pale. He instantly understood, this was the same shooter whose mission in Paris had failed. Begging for his life, he cried out, "Wait, please listen to me. I'm not the one to blame here. When your mission in Paris didn't go as planned, I told myself everyone makes mistakes and I let it go. But it was your own boss who pushed me. He convinced me that keeping you alive was too risky, and he asked me for another $1,500 to make sure you disappeared for good." Hearing this, the killer's anger boiled over. In truth, the old boss had been furious that his best shooter had failed the job. Fearing that if the police ever caught the killer, it would eventually lead back to him, the greedy boss had sent the two attackers to the killer's own home in the first place. The client kept pleading, "I swear, I had nothing to do with sending those two people after you. It was entirely your boss's doing." The killer studied the man's face closely and could tell, this frightened billionaire, standing on the edge of death, wasn't lying. After a long, heavy silence, the killer lowered his weapon. But before walking away, he issued one final warning in a voice cold as snow. "From this moment on, if my identity is ever exposed, I won't come back to talk, I'll come back to finish this." Trembling, the client nodded in agreement. With that, everything was settled. The fire of revenge that had burned inside the killer finally went quiet. He left quietly and returned home to the Dominican Republic. When he arrived, he found his girlfriend doing much better. She had fully woken from her coma. That day he buried his gun in the ground for the very last time, closing the door on his old life of violence and danger for good. Leaving behind the dark world of blood and gunpowder, he chose a new path, a calm, quiet, ordinary life with the woman he loved. If you liked the story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and thank you for watching.